Thanks for coming, everybody. I do know that the organizers of this conference were using the principle of saving the best for last. And you guys figured that out. So thank you for being here for the final show of the conference. In its great wisdom, the legislature of the great state of Washington decided that it was important to have some community-based public-private partnerships, or CBP3s, here. And they have set up a funding program to do that in the state of Washington, and they are very much encouraging it. And ecology is in charge of that funding program, and that's why we're here. The goals of the state are to do additional stormwater projects using CBP3s or other forms of alternative procurement. And they sent us here to make sure that you all know that this money is available and they want you to do this. And that some of you sign up to get technical assistance to help you make grant proposals and get good alternative procurement projects done. So if then this you sign up for help, we've done our job. Let's see. So the process is it's a panel, and I would love it to be an informal conversation, which starts with like some questions, like a little introduction on the topic from me. And then I'll have a question for each of them to introduce themselves, and then a specific question for the panelists. And you'll learn who they are and why they're so important to this conversation in a minute. And then they'll ask a question or two to each other, and then it's the audience turn. I would love it if this just gets informal and there's a lot of conversation. I think there's a ton of talking to be done about this. CBP3s and performance contracts are happening in wastewater, in road developments, and transportation, stormwater in other parts of the country. There is a CBP3 in Seattle, Rain City, CBP3. This is happening, and the state wants the local governments to know it and try it out, or at least figure out if it's the right thing to do. So with that, thanks for coming. My name is Chad Praul. I'm one of the founders of Environmental Incentives. The big thing about my career is to create performance-driven watershed protection programs. I love it when you can do something and show the numbers that things got better. You know, this many acres of impervious surface got treated, or this much volume of runoff has been treated. I think those programs maintain funding. And I saw in Lake Tahoe a situation where a bunch of projects were built and then kind of left and forgotten about and not mapped and not maintained. And I saw millions of dollars kind of just sitting there filling up with sand in Tahoe, and it really pissed me off. So that's why I founded Environmental Incentives, and we've been hired by Ecology to provide technical assistance for local governments to start winning these grants for using these alternative procurement techniques. So that's a little bit about me, and I love it if you panelists would introduce yourselves, your title, and who you work for, and how you're related to this project, your role in this project, so these guys know what you do, and then tell a story. Doesn't have to be super professional, just tell a little story that these folks can connect to you, maybe about these projects or maybe about something else. So first up is Sarah. So we have Sarah, Rachel, Rebecca, and Devan, and they'll give you their full names and all that stuff.
Thanks, Chad. So hello everyone, I'm Sarah Ponte. I'm with the Department of Ecology. I'm the funding coordinator and the planner for ecology for the CBP3 program. I was hired to guide the development of this program since it's brand new. And I've been working for about 2.5 years, and I'm also a financial manager for stormwater grants for our SFAC, or Stormwater Financial Assistance Program. What's the personal story? I before joining ecology, I was a PhD student at the University of Maryland, and I had some sensors on trees, measuring transpiration of trees, and trying to put a value on trees on how much water they're transpiring, and quantify their value for stormwater management. And this is Chesapeake Bay. There's a big interest there to quantify trees to use as a tool for stormwater management. And I see now we have the changes on our permits using stormwater as a tree and the map. And so it's good to see that that approach being used here, and it's gonna be interesting to see how the local governments are gonna move forward with that. So. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me? Okay, Rachel Konrady, City of Kirkland. I'm the surface water planning supervisor, so I oversee the team that does education and outreach, spill response, business inspections, and environmental monitoring. And I'm going to be kind of sharing the project management role on our CBP3 grant, the Kingsgate Commercial Redevelopment Potential. And my coworker Jenny Gauss and I have kind of tag teamed on trying to go to networking sessions, and we're like, oh, like what is this? We don't understand. And we finally, we both got to one and we're like, oh, the place that we're really thinking might be a good place for retrofit is on private property, and we don't have control over that. And the best tool we've had is like go into our permit system at Kirkland and like put a little flag and hope that the planner who sees that in the pre-development process is like, oh yeah, someone thinks it's cool for stormwater. And so we're like, that doesn't seem like a very effective tool. Like, what can we do to try a different way? And so we put in all different project ideas and had a great conversation with Chad. And I was like, a lot of these, you're not on the right path. Okay. And so we had one that like, they think this is the right path. And so that's why we're here. And Jenny couldn't be here, so I'm representing Kirkland, but we're really kind of a pair trying to tag team our project.
I'm Rebecca Degopolsky. I'm a principal engineer with Herrera Environmental Consultants. So I've been working with Chad and EIM's project since it started. So really just trying to get projects in the state of Washington that are CBP3 focused. So we've been working on projects. I've been working in consulting for almost 20 years now. So working with a variety of different municipal permittees. So we came on as kind of the local experts that have a lot of contacts and working with folks and knowing the grant process. So really walking folks through that process, putting together grant applications, helping support that process, because really ecology has its money, they want to give it to you. So we're working with folks to try to get good applications together and get that funding passed out to permittees, and just encouraging folks to apply this next round, because we really want people to keep applying so we can keep this source of funding going into the future. So we want to make sure we keep having applicants to show that there is a need for this funding. In terms of personal story, if we're going way back, when I first moved to Seattle, I did my master's in limnology, and I rode around in Green Lake in a rowboat, and just looking at the connection of stormwater impacting urban spaces, and really that got me into thinking about how to help local communities and really looking at urban stormwater and trying to tackle as many issues as we can. I work mainly with municipalities, and so a variety of different municipalities all over Western Washington, Eastern Washington, and really just having an impact in our communities. What's the best way to get projects in the ground? And I think this is a great opportunity, like you said, to get more projects on private lands. If you're running out of public lands to put projects in, there's so much opportunity out there, and just getting a different contracting approach to get at that. So.
And hi, everybody. My name is Devan Rostorfer. I'm the Clean Water Division Manager for Clark County Public Works. So very local. Our office was in walking distance, so we're really happy that Unicon came to our town. My background is CBP3s. I started my career working in Detroit, Michigan, which was unique because Detroit, Michigan was under a consent decree for talented combined sewer overflow. So not only were there the municipal stormwater permit requirements driving all of our programs, there was also this consent decree which said we needed to deliver a certain amount of green infrastructure by a certain time to add additional detention capacity. And so about 7 to 10 years ago, there were a lot of people looking at different models across the United States and starting to talk about CBP3s and different ways to deliver projects. Because as we all know, there is more work and more projects and operations and maintenance that needs to be done than our local governments are able to deliver. So along the way, I started following a lot of the research and articles coming out of places like the Environmental Policy Innovation Center on alternative procurement. And when I came to Clark County, our lead on operations and maintenance was talking about our need to address bioretention facility maintenance and his interest in partnering with the private sector to address challenges that we were having with staff and expertise to complete maintenance of vegetative stormwater facilities, since many of them are more familiar with the traditional gray infrastructure maintenance and operations activities. And a light bulb went off in my head. I saw the CBP3 network and I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect for a CBP3. Let's start going. And I just want to acknowledge Marley from our team, maybe you can raise your hand, has been attending those networks, and we were really excited to see if this was a good fit and really appreciate all the resources to make this happen for us. So thank you.
Devan was, it was like, I was like preaching to the choir when Devan comes in the room because she already knew so much about it. It was really great to work with her and Clark. And it is cool to be in Clark, actually, at this conference. I'm excited about it. Devan said, hey, I've got places to recommend for you to go for a run and stuff. So like she's a host when we're here.
And up here in the, if you were at karaoke last night, I had a great time with y'all.
Could be the laugh of the day. All right. It's good to get to know you four. And folks, I want you to connect with them. Let's start talking fairly soon. You do have to kind of get the background, or I think you might need the background. So could you guys just weigh in with your hands for a second? How many have ever heard of CBP3 or community-based public-private partnership? 1, 2. Hey, okay, good. Does anybody want to come up and define it? Or should I do it? Okay. So lots of people have heard of it, actually. Maybe half of you have heard of it, have the basic idea of it. How many of you are local government employees? Okay. And how many of you are regulators? All right. And how many of you are consultant? And how many of you are something else? All right. Let's talk later. I want to know what you guys do. So CBP3, it's a big acronym. It's even hard to say, and it's really long. But what is it? Well, it's pretty simple at its most basic level. It's just focusing around the local government, and they make a partnership, a contract with the private sector to go get something done that they need. And it's kind of hard to do that exclusively for stormwater, because a lot of folks don't have a fee for stormwater, and they might need some other reasons to pay. But basically, there's some reasons why the local government wants to use the private sector to get their stormwater goals met. And then they build something on top of a foundation of community involvement, meaning that the community is needing something, because do communities really like shout about stormwater and have protests about stormwater? Not really, in my experience. They're like, yeah, I don't want my yard to flood and I don't want erosion, but all this water quality is kind of extra. So if the local government can figure out what the community needs in addition to the stormwater compliance, it really makes for a powerful program. And there are great examples of workforce development or housing or open space that come about through doing CBP3. All right, so it's just the local government making a contract with the private sector and standing on top of a bunch of community involvement that creates the CBP3. Simple enough, kind of general. Let's go a little deeper. Uh-oh, now I'm in trouble. Yes. About 5 years ago, Sarah, we released a guidebook. Ecology and Commerce and my company wrote a guidebook that kind of described CBP3s and 2 solar systems of ways to procure projects: traditional procurement and alternative procurement. I think most of you do a lot of traditional procurement where you design a product, somebody does an optimization and figures out a place to do the project, and then you go, okay, now we bid it, we get one of our engineers to design it, permit it, and then we take bids to build it, and then the project gets turned over to the county or the city, and then they run it and they operate it. And sometimes, like in Lake Tahoe, you don't operate it. It just kind of withers away over 20 years. Still mad. So that's traditional procurement. I don't have to tell you much about that. There are risks of traditional procurement, and there are situations where there may be alternative procurements that are better. However, I am a cheerleader of alternative procurement, but it is not the right thing to do half the time. Like most of the time or half the time, just do traditional procurement, it's fine. If you know you've got a place on the corner of First and A Street and you've got a design that looks pretty good and you've done all the optimizations, build it, that's just do the traditional procurement. So my solar system over here is pretty basic, but what we're here to talk about is alternative procurement. And really the two things within alternative procurement are CBP3s and performance contracts. The legislature is really excited about CBP3 because it's like a buzz term, but really it's really a one part of this little solar system. And like I said earlier, the CBP3 creates a partnership between a muni and a private company. It measures benefits beyond stormwater, something that the community cares about. And in Washington, in guidebook, we added it develops and maintains green stormwater infrastructure. That's not universal. It's not always green infrastructure. You can do great infrastructure with this, but that's what we wrote in the guidebook 5 years ago. I'm not sure I love that we did that, but it's my fault, so I'll live with it. CBP3s are that agreement that thinks about the community, and it's that contract between the public and private partner. But almost all CBP3s, and I think all of them should have at their heart a performance contract, which is something where you pay only when you get the outcomes that you're looking for. It's not about building a project, it's about getting that volume of treatment or those acres of impervious surface treated or whatever it is that your municipality or county cares about. That's what you're trying to get, paying for those outcomes, paying for performance. And there are a lot of terms that float around in the solar system of alternative procurement, like pay for performance contracting, pay for success, P3s. All those things are really just focusing on these two concepts, a CBP3 and then a performance contract. So in the contract, the thing that makes it performance-based is it's paying for outcomes. It has metrics or performance measures that people agree on how they are measured and verified. Got to make sure you understand what counts and how people are going to check it. If you don't figure that out up front, the private partner will negotiate later and it will not be as cost effective. And then there are terms based on the outcomes, when you pay. So those three things make a performance contract. That's the terminology that is used in Washington. I think it's pretty useful. All those blue planets flying around the solar system, they're useful, they're good. But these are the two concepts that are really essential. So there you go, Chad's giving you some terminology. There's some examples of these things out in the Mid-Atlantic and in Seattle Public Utilities, down in San Diego. And my company has been involved in helping a few people do this, a few places do it. So we're kind of cheerleaders. And then there are those private partners out there who are not environmental incentives, but folks like Corvius and Greenprint and BMP, these various companies that actually take on these contracts and do this. When should you do it or why should you do it? That's the question that it takes a while for people to come to, but I think there are 4 really clear ones that I would want to bring out, which is, first one, it's difficult to fund just a stormwater program. It's just not everybody's dying to do stormwater, it's really the compliance for the municipality that matters. So the answer to that alternative procurement can bring is community benefits. Making sure you talk to your community and figure out they really do want workforce, or they really want open space, or they want something else that's really important to them, underserved communities to be supported. The big one that I find happening most of the time is that when it's got to be fast, that's when you want to do alternative procurement. Design to optimize, bid, design, bid, build, and then turn over to maintain. It just takes a long time to do all that. You might want to roll all those stages of the project delivery cycle into one process. So expedited project delivery, a big reason why alternative procurement is done. You notice I'm using the term alternative procurement to include CBP3. The legislature put it in their proviso CBP3, they just use this one piece of it, but alternative procurement is the bigger language that I want you guys to use. The next one is land. It's hard for municipalities to buy land, and it's not worth it when it's just little bits of land. And yet municipalities don't own all the land that they're responsible for getting clean, the water and stormwater clean. So private folks, private developers, private landowners, they're better and faster at getting land. So access to private land is a reason that people do alternative procurement or CBP3s. And then sometimes the infrastructure that you're building, green infrastructure or gray, is pretty expensive to do. And you can stretch your dollars a little bit in some situations, not always. You can get better value for money based on rolling different parts of the project delivery cycle into one contract. So a design build sort of situation or a maintenance piece. There are several ways in which you can get more competition from the private sector when you do it. And the private sector is pretty good at doing administrative stuff efficiently. Okay, so those are the whys of alternative procurement. Thanks for listening so long. Any just burning questions that you got asked now about the technical stuff before we start kind of more going into the panelists' experience with this? This is what I think is the necessary background. It's like, what is it and why would you do it? Okay, we're moving on. Great. We'll have more time for you guys to talk later. And we do have candy for anybody who asks a question or tells their own story. We're going to distribute candy to participants in this conversation. So, first question goes to Sarah. What is the state's commitment to CBP3s and what's been going on?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with a quick background. Like Chad mentioned, there's the guidebook and the feasibility assessment that was done in 2019. Like to provide some resources for local governments interested in following some steps to promote the CBP3 or use CBP3 as a strategy for project implementation. But and after that we included some language to say, okay, it's feasible in some community, it could be feasible in some communities, there are no legal obstacles statewide, but when we included that language as an eligibility, as an eligible project under S5 under our water quality combined funding program for a couple of years, but there were no takers. We didn't see any applications related to CBP3. And then we got some funding from the legislature to provide technical assistance and also to have a grant program for CBP3 pilot projects. So that's when I came in to start an RFP to hire a consultant for the technical assistance, and then ecology. We worked with Department of Commerce and the Association of Washington Cities to evaluate the proposals we got and to evaluate how we're going to approach this technical assistance. And EI proposed some steps like using we're going to show later, but using this starting broader with several local governments and then a more hands-on individualized assistance. And then we started our grant program too. After we had some technical assistance provided, then we started our grant program last year with the first round of applications for planning agreements. And also you
want me to advance the slide?
Yeah. So yeah, starting with this technical assistance to try to provide local knowledge. So the phase one of this program is the build local capacity. So to try to tell the governments what the heck is CBP3 and how they can use CBP3 with projects that they might be stuck, not have access to land or want to share some risks. So we're starting with the broad outreach, like conferences that we're here now. We developed some fact sheets And then going to the learning networks, which is being one of the most valuable tools to get folks on the same page, and not only local governments, but we had some folks from private sector, nonprofits. And we have an opportunity to have guest speakers and also share the local perspective. And because we have the big examples like in Maryland, but people that don't know how they can scale back to their small municipalities. So it was an opportunity to share ideas. And we had great participation so far. And then going to more individualized assistance for with the readiness assessments that we provided opportunity. We had a forum online that we announced to our learning networks that, hey, if you want some technical assistance, you have an initial project idea, but you don't know how to go about it or if it's feasible, you can reach out, and then we have our EI hearabout to walk you through how can you make this a project. And then procurement memos that the HERA has been developing with the local governments after they have an initial idea. And that's draft RFP, City of Spokane. We help them develop a draft RFP, and we're gonna be refining that through their grant agreement. And then the grant application assistance. So this is a unique program because we are not only providing the funding for your grant money for your project, we're also providing the tools to actually apply for it. And we've been getting good feedback on that part. So yeah, I guess that's our main mission and values, to get projects out the door using CBP3s and a strategy for that.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, so it's really important that ecology realized not everybody would just know what this is and do it. They wanted to offer technical assistance to folks like you to, in the end, send some applications in and then make some projects. Part of doing those grant applications some help for that came from Rebecca. So Rebecca gets the next question, which is, when you were helping folks do those grant applications, what did you see as needing to be like a change of mindset for them to make a CBP3 application as opposed to a traditional procurement application?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of projects we do in, stormwater, we've got a site identified, we've got a specific goal in mind, we've got a piece of land that we want to do the project on. So this is kind of backing up quite a bit and saying, where do I want to see projects go in without identifying a site, which is kind of hard as an engineer to not identify a specific site and the considerations that you need for that. So thinking about, is this a citywide program, countywide program? Is this a specific watershed where I really want to have this impact? And I'm not going to identify sites. So you have to keep reminding yourself that don't identify the sites yet. You're getting help with that stage of the process. So really looking at what some of your bigger picture goals are, and then taking a look from there as to what would make the most benefit. So really thinking through those things. Is it, I want projects in this area, but I don't have the land to do so. What are some key goals and considerations? And then it is tougher to write that grant application because a lot of the questions are very focused on, where is your project site? What are your specific water quality goals that you want to target? So those questions you do have to kind of reframe a little bit and think kind of a bit more broadly in terms of what you might want to see, because that private partner will then come in and help you identify those sites later, but you don't have to do all that groundwork up front. So this is a great process because you get money to do the planning portion of the project, and then later on there'll also be money to do the implementation portion of the project. So really, it's a phased approach. So I think as we get more of these projects going in Washington, it'll be a bit more streamlined. But since we're still all learning together, it's great that Ecology is providing the funding for the planning as well as implementation. And then as we get a few more of these in the ground and get this knowledge base in the region, I think it'll be more streamlined from there on out. So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so next question is going to go to Devan. So like I said earlier, when I got in the room with Devan, it was like preaching to the choir. She knew something about CBP3.
He's talking me up. It's not true.
And she's excited about it. And so the question for Devan is, where did you learn about it? And I think you got a little into that in your story, but like, is there any references or things that you recommend to this group of people to like go check it out and learn more?
Well, first I want to say I knew enough to be dangerous, but what I've really appreciated about the Learning Network is how I took that idea and inspiration to do things differently, and the Learning Network really gave me the roadmap to do that and helped us understand the complexities. And what I've learned is that there's a lot of different ways to do alternative procurement. There's a lot of different ways to do CBP3s. What Clark County wants to do is very different than what the city of Kirkland wants to do. And what I'm learning is that there's connections to legal, there's connections to our procurement policies, there's connection to our union considerations, because we're looking to partner with the private sector to do public work. Can we do that? Is the union going to, see that as taking away public work from public employees? So we have a lot of I have more questions right now, I think, than answers. And part of this first phase is for us to explore those questions, for us to work directly with our lawyers, to get their buy-in, for us to work with our procurement team to understand what we can and cannot do while being consistent with Washington State's procurement laws. It enables us to work with our union representatives and our HR department to understand, again, what we can and cannot do. We're also interested in how do we reduce our risk? How do we achieve cost recovery if it doesn't work? What insurances and liabilities? So these are, again, more questions than answers, but what I'm really excited about by taking advantage of the Learning Network is this first phase of funding is just going to help us figure all that out. So we're not planning to implement anything until phase 2. So we're really excited, one, for the opportunity to come together, 2, that Ecology essentially provided us with access to Herrera to help us submit the application. As you all know, if you've applied for funding from Ecology, no offense, Ecology, it's really hard. And I used to work for Ecology, like those grant applications take time. And so having that, I don't know if we could have gotten our application in without the assistance from this network. So I just want to thank Ecology and this CBP3 environmental incentives also along the way helping us. And really our goal is to figure out if it's a good fit. There is a chance that we get through this and our lawyers say absolutely not. There's a chance that we get through this and our procurement team says no way, or what the heck are you trying to do? Same with our HR department in consideration of unions. So right now though, we want to learn, we want to build the resources to start recruiting private sector partners, and hopefully we're successful and can launch in phase 2.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the things that has marked the success of many of the CBP3s and other alternative procurements is there is a champion within the local government that says, hey, I really can see why this is going to be better, and there is a real need for change. If there isn't a need for change, traditional procurement's good. It helps a lot a lot of times, but I would encourage folks to check out the examples of programs that have worked really well as a performance contract or a CBP3. Devan's in the trenches right now, getting there. She's, I think, the champion. All right, next question goes to Rachel. Rachel's got a project that's funded and they are trying to figure out how to do it. Can you tell us about the project and how you're going to decide if you'll do it as a CBP3 or not?
Yeah, I'm not the champion that Devan is. Still learning a lot. So we came to our project idea through the Stormwater Financial Assistance Program. We have a traditional planning retrofit. So we went to a certain portion of our watershed, 180 watershed, and we were trying to find where might there be good opportunities for traditional retrofit, right? Is that a regional facility? Is that a publicly, what might work and where? And so, and this is mostly work by Jenny Gauss and consultants. And in that process, we found there are a few places that make a lot of sense. We have identified, we probably have found the one unicorn in Kirkland, which was a park that needed, fixing up and could also infiltrate 50 acres of stormwater. That project has been done, and now we're saying that really was a unicorn. We've looked at our other parks, like where is there land to do work? And so it so happens that in this portion of the Juanita watershed, there's a commercial zone that's has about 50 acres coming to it. So it kind of is a natural place where water is moving. And we're like, hey, this could be an awesome place. And so of course we did what stormwater engineers do and planners do, say that spot, we wanna go there. And what we learned in this process is maybe we could step back. Maybe we shouldn't identify the specific parking lot or a specific commercial business, but we could use this process to help us ask the questions, what would bring those people to the table? Is it conversations about what could redevelopment look like on their properties? Is it helping the community understand what benefits they could get out of this? Could they get more gathering space? Could they get new businesses? And so that's how we came to this. And I feel like we were stepping a lot of into, we realized we're like, well, the city's kind of done this type of work, but stormwater people haven't done it. It always hasn't been a stormwater. I think it's been like, oh, there's political will to have a neighborhood center somewhere else, right? So our executive group is making deals that we don't always understand, right, with stormwater practitioners. And so we're like, how do we do this? And especially we're like, how much would it cost? And all these questions. And so that's why it was critical for Carrera and Chad to help us understand that. So that's how we got to where we are. We're proposing to do a feasibility. So looking at what will bring people to the table, we kind of feel like it's like chicken and egg. We don't want to do too much and have them feel like, well, you're proposing a project to us, versus having nothing to say, what would bring you guys to the table to think about stormwater? We know that if the area does redevelop, we will eventually get stormwater facilities there, but that is a game of waiting, right? That could be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, because this commercial area was built in before stormwater management was, had facilities. So that's kind of the game we're playing, and we're also going to be asking our legal department, are there any, hurdles? Checking to make sure there aren't any political hurdles, and also making sure that the community, they had done a recent neighborhood plan, and in part of that is identified this would be an area of mixed use. And then maybe there was less political will over time for that. So also making sure that we're being really sensitive to what the community wants, and that this isn't something that we're saying redevelopment has to happen, but stormwater management could happen. That is paving the way for eventual redevelopment, not blocking redevelopment in that area. So that's how we got, oh, and the off ramps. If there's not the political will, if there is a legal hurdle, or if the private property owners, which there are 11 different private property owners, if they come to the table and, or they don't come to the table, or they come to the table and say, absolutely not, we're not interested in engaging in this process. So we're kind of doing, my understanding now, I realize we're kind of doing what part of the private partnership could be doing, and they will be doing, but it's not bundled together. So it's step one, and as Devan said, then well, if we can get to the place where we can think about alternative procurement, that would be step two.
Just what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, there you go.
Under this. Okay, so we have some questions that the panelists can ask each other, but it's you're seeing that I'm sitting down now. It's time for the audience to get involved. Who's got a question that could come to a panelist? Is there something anybody said that you'd like to start asking questions to? Let's go for the audience first.
Yeah.
And we'll do our questions if we need to.
Thank you for that question, and congratulations. I know you're also a recipient, and we had a chance to talk at lunch, and King County is doing something very different than Clark County, but I think there's a lot we can learn from each other. So just to back up and clarify, bit of context, our CBP3 is focused on implementing maintenance on our vegetated stormwater facilities, specifically our bioretention facilities. So Clark County has around 600 bioretention facilities that are in different levels of condition. So we put out an RFP separate from the CBP3 to start assessing what are the conditions of our bioretention facilities, which ones just need they need a little bit of maintenance, and then we can get into more routine maintenance versus where do we need a full reconstruct because something went wrong, or maybe they weren't built right, or the vegetation never established, versus those that are in the middle that may just need a little bit of replanting. So I think we were calling it like repair, replenish, and then routine as kind of the triple R's that I had in my head. So right now we're getting information on what facilities we should be focusing on and what are we looking at, and what that will help us inform what type of partner that we need to do the work. Is it just some more advanced landscaping, or do we need companies to work with that can do like a full rebuild of a bioretention facility. So that's happening adjacent and will help us, but we have 2 RFPs within our scope of work with in this current grant. So the first RFP is to actually hire somebody to help us build the program. And then that consultant team will help us build the RFP to ultimately get solicitations to do the work in phase 2. And separate from that, the program development assistant consultant will be also helping us come up with the template for a contract that outlines all of the verification methods, the performance measures, the payment terms, which are really the key to making a contract performance-based. So really great question. Thank you for letting me clarify. So in total, there are right now 3 RFPs. So there is a lot of procurement, and what we're here to talk about is alternative procurement, because as we all know, procurement is really time consuming. And if we can do it better, then I think all of us will benefit.
Other questions?
I just want to add that the city of Spokane received the assistance to develop a draft RFP for alternative procurement. So Trey is the recipient, he's in another presentation, but Konrady has developed that, and it's one of the other tasks, but it's not quite ready. So they also have a draft RFP under our grant agreement. So they're gonna leverage that because there's all this other planning that like defining the payment terms, what are the stormwater outcome, community goals. They're gonna refine that RFP. So it's like this maybe preliminary RFP that Konrady has done some work with them, but then they're gonna actually refine that based on the planning they're doing under the grants that we provided.
So like many utilities, we have rate revenue. And so we have to maintain these bioretention facilities no matter what. So we have included in our rate assumptions our baseline maintenance needs, which we'll pay for with our rate revenue. And then going into our rates were recently increased, and we knew we wanted to do this, and we knew that some of our bioretention facilities needed a bit more work than others. So we were able to include the additional capital in our rate model and also into our CIP, which is ultimately how this work will be programmed for those more substantial repairs over 25,000. And so it did take some coordination with our budget, with our rate assessment, and we'll essentially pay for it in the same way that we would pay for our own internal operations staff to do it. But the real key here is we have a challenge with hiring and retaining staff right now that want to do that work. And then there is a specific training element to help train our crews on how to establish vegetation. So we saw some opportunities to help build those skills, and we could build them internally. However, we could lose those staff. So we're hoping to create a market so that we have more private sector partners outside of just our public crews that are able to do this work as we need to.
Great question. And that's part of the investigation, right? Is like what will be of interest to them. It could be that what's interested in them is to have a regional facility that then they can pay into when the redevelopment does happen. It could be that an incentive for them is to, that's what we kind of use one of the big incentives. There could be other incentives that come out of this process that they tell us, right? They're saying, here's my carrot. And the goal would be for us to know what that carrot is and to see if we can provide that, or the community to be interested in that. I feel like, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We don't know for sure.
Figuring out it.
Yeah, and I feel like as stormwater practitioners, that's not usually our bailiwick. So I think that was why in particular, I was like, maybe the planning department does that sometimes, right? When they're trying to get people interested in like, what does redevelopment look like? And so that's where we also developed a strong partnership with our planning department, which is, you know, across the physical aisle from us, to say, we need your help in understanding who the right people are to come to, like, it's a strategic political conversation. So who are those people who can have that conversation and ask, you know, and it's probably not a public entity, right? It's probably a private partner who can sit at that real table and find out what really motivates someone who owns that property. Like, why are they redeveloping now? And what could get them there? Or what could get them to do stormwater management? Not really the redevelopment, less of our goal.
Yeah, I'll share the ecology perspective and then you can add to my comment. So yeah, community benefits, what we've been seeing, workforce development. So some of the examples like Hera developed the procurement memos is having a certain percentage of workforce for small minority women-owned businesses, enterprises. Other outcomes would be risk sharing. So one of the questions, I guess that's also one of the questions we talked about in our agreement negotiations. So why are you doing alternative procurement and not traditional procurement? And a lot of the things I heard from the recipients was, oh, there's private land, but there's not enough public land. So that's one reason why we're pursuing this. There's also lack of expertise for Clark County. They want to hire out because the county staff is more specialized in green infrastructure. So they want the right skill set for that. And they want to have a value for it. So they want to charge for the specific up for performance. So not only doing the job, but doing the job for using performance metrics. And the other big one is risk sharing. So having some risk sharing between the local government and the private partner. And so who is going to maintain that? So there's also in the agreements of bundling contracts. So not only they're building the structure or doing this activity maintenance, but they are doing this, there's in the agreement for the long-term maintenance, making sure this is performing based on the performance metrics established on the agreement, the contract they have. I'll let you answer.
I could add a little bit to that. I think I have a question though. How many of you have inherited infrastructure that you're like, wait a second, like they shouldn't have done it that way, or what the heck happened here? So one of the things that it helps us with is we have these bioretention facilities, and either we inherit them because they were private and they were donated to the county, or they're ours, and they have to get through these warranty inspections, and then the bonds are released, which that's done in a completely different department. So we've had challenges where we have infrastructure, the project was delivered, but wait a second, that might not have, you know, there were some things that we probably should have caught and asked for correction. So by having this performance metric that really says you don't get paid until the end after you show us that this works and the vegetation's established and everything's functioning as it should. It's not just that we're holding back like a bond or that it's connected to a warranty period, it's connected to the full payment for the delivery of the facility. So that's one, what's in it for Clark County. I would also say that, how many of you are having challenges with your operating budgets right now? Anybody? Okay, I think most of us. So one of the biggest draws on that is permanent staff. And so we're being very careful about adding a lot of new permanent staff, again, represented, they're in, and the effects it has on our operating budget. And so what is unique about taking this private partnership approach is that we're able to still get the work done that we're required to do and stay in compliance without during a time where our operating budget is struggling and adding people is very difficult for us to justify politically. And so it's a really great mechanism for us to still deliver projects, to deliver operations and maintenance, focused on our current permit term, without adding additional long-term operating budget liability.
And there's a lot of poster child programs, a few poster child programs around the country. And I feel like I shouldn't tell a whole story of one right now, but I do tell that story often. And I'd be happy to tell you after, or refer you to the guidebook for CBP3s for municipal performance managers, which has the stories there too. But if there's time, I can tell a story about the Clean Water Partnership for Prince George's County in Maryland. Other questions?
I was also gonna add that the past Learning Network meetings are all posted online, and there's some great examples in there. Rain City is our one big local example, but there were case studies from other areas of the country as well, so Milwaukee is one. I think that's a great resource to look back at and kind of get you up to speed on what the program is and what our challenges are and what some examples out there are. So some of these are larger cities, so we're definitely scaling this down for phase 2, you know, smaller city and county implementation within the state, but some good examples out there.
Yes.
Yeah, so our CBP3 program, there are facility projects are eligible and also activities like ClarkCounty is an activity project. But it does have to have stormwater value, so it's under the water quality combined funding program, so it does have to prove water quality value and then community we prioritize projects that show community value benefit. And for our for the planning grants, there's no match requirement, but for our implementation funds, we are incorporating now for our next funding guidelines. We are gonna say there's no match for implementation if projects show they are gonna be having community benefits. The first round of applications, you're asking like how much funding was requested?
No, when you set up an alternative procurement contract, like what funding level are we talking about?
We've seen big ones.
Big ones?
Yeah, there's been like the big counties like Prince George's County, they've ended up spending over 100 million for the big CBP3 there. But there are examples of performance contracts that go down into the $1-2 million range. So that's not atypical. You probably don't get a big, like a private company just take on your stormwater risk for your municipality for $1 million or $2 million, but there are projects that get done or programs that get operated in that range. And in addition to just the dollar size, companies that provide the CBP3 service, which is kind of the big whole enchilada approach, they're looking for a portfolio of risk. So they want to be able to do different types of projects. So in case something happens and these ones don't work out, they've got some other ones that can take and fill the delivery requirements of the acres you needed treated or the amount of volume required or the load reduction of phosphorus or whatever. They need to have different types of projects and ways to complete the contract. So a portfolio of risk in addition to scale of dollars.
Chad, I might also add, and I'm sorry to pick on my friends at King County, but I was really interested in what you were proposing at lunch. Maybe a little bit about how you're using it to achieve your SMED requirements. My understanding is you could hand somebody your entire capital plan or your entire project portfolio that needs to be implemented to meet your SMED requirements and say, hey, go do this, show me you did it, and then we'll pay you. Maybe you can talk about what you're doing.
Yeah, we haven't, that part of our phase 1 is gonna be like establishing the payment and performance criteria. So The goal of our CBP3 grant and project is to do the research and really coordinate with our procurement and legal staff, but also understanding the willingness or interest in consultants in the area to participate. And because these are kind of risky new contracts for the area and would require a consultant to take on a lot of that capital upfront. So, but we are wanting to be able to offer paying for performance for implementing SMED projects. And that could be like large scale retrofit projects or some kind of like riparian and restoration by the mile, river mile. So yeah, I think several million is probably a correct kind of a ballpark of what we would anticipate our final contracting.
And the simple way I would summarize that or try, even though it's not capturing all the details and things that King has thought about, is they're gonna do a reverse auction for SMED points. Instead of saying, hey, build me a project over at the church on First Street, they're saying, what does the private sector have out there to bring us a few hundred SMED points or up to 1,000 SMED points? And let's see what people have. And maybe there's gonna be an NGO that has a wild area that can do some treatments there that brings 500 SMED points for $2 million. Or maybe there's a church with a parking lot that can be treated and they bring you 250 SMED points for $1 million, or some other programmatic thing. Somebody buys a bunch of sweepers and takes care of all the streets and gets you 700 SMED points for $700,000. Something like that could be a reverse auction that King County could have. And I think, I was talking to Todd Hunsdorfer about it a year ago or something, and his thought was, let's set up the system and then let the individual local governments do their own RFPs for their own bid amounts, but just everybody will play by the same rules. Okay. Oh,
Christy, do you wanna know like what we got for our planning grant? Is that,
Sure, yeah.
we got 350,000 for planning, which if we identify that the off ramp is that people are not interested in engaging any further, right, we won't be using all of that, right, because that cuts off some of our deliverables. But that'll help us do a lot of that analysis and feasibility. And we've also, we've identified one of the other off ramps might be is depending on what the carrot is for that private development, if they're like, we'll sell you this chunk, or we'll give you an easement right here. Well, then maybe traditional procurement makes more sense for us in that, because they've just said, here it is, you can do it. So that's something that may come up in this process as well.
we better let you guys go.
Can I just add one more thing? So yeah, most of the projects we got, the applications we received were about $300 for the planning, but exception with Tequila, they received about 600,000 because they also have a task for preliminary engineering. So that's increased the cost. They have a more robust planning involved.
Okay, so thank you all for coming, especially thanks to these four who accepted my offer. Sarah is somebody you can reach out to, thanks to Ecology for actually pulling this off. And like I said, the reason we're here is to get more local governments going to ecology.wa.gov CBP3 or taking a picture of this and going to the second bullet and requesting assistance. Then we can work with you directly and figure out what's right, what might make sense for you guys, or what is a crazy idea, and Chad's just gonna tell you to do it in traditional procurement. Thanks again, we'll see you next year.